Morning, everybody. Bright and early. I want to thank everybody for showing up this morning. Like I said, bright and early at 8 a.m. We're doing something a little bit different this morning. We're going to have a discussion about tech talent and staffing. So we've actually have a few different staffing companies with us this morning, and I will introduce them shortly. But I did want to give a brief overview of what Palm Beach Tech, now South Florida Tech, is. We are actually a tech nonprofit. We started 5 years ago in downtown West Palm and are now pushing out to be a regional organization. So we work with companies from Miami to Martin County, work a lot with the colleges, universities, our coding schools, and of course, a lot of the headquartered companies that are here, just helping connect the dots, bringing the community together and making sure that everybody has a place to go to for resources, networking, and connecting. I want to introduce our panelists this morning. Like I said, we have 4 from different staffing companies. We've got to start with Sarah Norton, ladies first, from Signature Consultants, Max Spanier from Sloane Staffing, Tyson Franco from Mako Professionals, and Eric Bomengen from Crescent Solutions. So our discussion today, like I said, is going to be focused on tech talent in South Florida, talking about everything from what are some of the skills necessary, what are we seeing, in the market, and how has COVID changed that, and then obviously talking about some of the benefits of using a staffing agency and why people should look at that both from the client and talent perspective. So I want to start out just by having each of the speakers introduce yourselves, tell us which company you come from, of course, your name, your title, and what you do, and just a little bit about your organization. Sarah, I'm going to have ladies first, so if you'd like to start us off.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. So like Nikki mentioned, my name is Sarah Norton. I work with Signature Consultants. So I am in an account management position, been with the company for about 2.5 years, right out of school, staffing all the way. So we are a nationwide IT staffing company. We're actually headquartered here in South Florida, actually in Fort Lauderdale. So South Florida is one of the markets we've been in the longest, and we're really expanding that. We have a Miami office, we have a West Palm office, and actually as of last week, we now have an Orlando office too. So really growing out Florida, making our presence known there. So like many other staffing firms, we help candidates find new roles within the IT market. But kind of our biggest differentiator and what we like to focus on is the relationship model, actually getting to know the candidates, getting to know who they are, what they're looking for, the best cultural fit for them. And then doing the same with our clients, getting to know about their cultures, what they look for in candidates, what really makes up the team, and really making that perfect pairing and making that match for both sides to be happy. So that is what I do in my role. That is a little bit about Signature, and I will kick it off.
Thank you, Sarah, and congratulations on the new Orlando office too. That's a big accomplishment. I'm just going to go with who's next on my screen. So I've got Eric up next.
Eric Bomengen, Crescent Solutions Resource Manager. Established in 2001, we're a boutique firm. We really base everything off integrity, relationships, and joined in December. Everything has been great joining them, and really happy to be a part of the team and everything that they've set for a foundation.
Thank you. And I've got Max next on my screen.
Hey guys, Max Spanier, Sloane Staffing. I don't have the traditional recruiting background like a lot of you folks. I've been an enterprise software seller my entire career. I found a real interesting niche in the marketing technology, digital marketing landscape, where we're able to find a lot of people within this field because of my background selling this software. So typically we work with organizations who are frustrated around just hiring any individual within an organization. So thanks again, Nikki, for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Max. Tyson, last but not least.
Yeah, so my name is Tyson Franco. I've been in the IT staffing career now for 12 years. And so I created my own company about 2 years ago. Our focus is we specialize in enterprise applications, so ERP and also business intelligence and data management, data warehousing type roles. So we work on a national basis, but we're based here in Jupiter, Florida, and we definitely love the South Florida market. And I myself is Palm Beach State computer grad, so it's all relevant. I love this area.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And I do want to just mention, Another thank you to all the speakers, but they are also all of our members. So, as far as if anybody listening needs any of their services, they are preferred members of ours, being, just members of our organization. And I'd be happy to connect anybody to them if anybody needs it. But I want to go right into some questions this morning. So we're going to start off just by, can you guys tell us a little bit about, and this is for anybody, you guys can go whoever would like to on the panel, but can you tell us a little bit about what the job market looks like these days, but then also how has that changed with COVID being here? How does that look?
Well, I can start. Well, within Florida, it's actually been interesting. Florida is ranked to be the 6th most common, I guess, state to be able to post, a lot of the IT positions. Traditionally, remote almost was a bad word at some point, which was interesting. But fast forward to today, it's almost everything's been remote, and we've had quite a bit of uptick as of now. May was the worst month overall, and now we're finally seeing clients kind of coming out of their quarantine closet, so to speak, and now they actually be able to spend some money and be able to address the projects and needs that they had kind of pre-COVID. So the worst is behind us. Hopefully, I'm highly optimistic of the future.
Yeah. Kind of going off what Tyson said, we definitely saw right after coronavirus hit in end of March, May was a rough month. Everyone was adjusting to changing their environments to remote. But actually within IT, every industry was affected by this, but IT, luckily, a lot of those projects have to move on or else the organizations kind of fall behind. So we did see a lot of hiring was maintained, especially in the very beginning, the support front. Companies having to switch all their environments to remote. So I know March, May, even into June, a lot of help desk, a lot of application support. We saw a very high number of those skill sets in demand within South Florida and really nationwide, just because everyone was at home. I know I've put in 1 million tickets because I have no idea how to do anything, and people need the help on that front. So we've definitely seen that. A lot more demand on that skill set, which wasn't as common before COVID.
I think the only difference between what you guys have said and us is April was the real slow month for us. We made 0 placements in April, but over the last 3 months, we've done, I think, 34 placements across 4 people. So we're seeing a huge uptick, like a lot of you guys, where to start the whole entire COVID thing, everybody was in the office. And now I think, like Tyson said, a lot of our clients are in the Bay Area, New York, Chicago, and they're pro remote. And now we're seeing a lot of companies down here in South Florida who are, following suit. So I think it's only going to get more and more, like other areas.
I mean, I'd say pre-COVID, the market there's more jobs than there was talent. And everything got flipped upside down, like with so many people losing their jobs, being laid off, everything that really affected a lot of people and affected the job market, as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny too, Sarah, that you were saying that just about the support roles too, because I remember when you were in even our first virtual career expo that we've had, because we had 2 of them. We had one in April and then one, was it last month, the month prior? I remember the one in April, you said, yeah, that's kind of a lot of what we're seeing right now. So it makes sense because like you said, a lot of projects have to continue, and that seems to be the few, support roles that are definitely needed to keep that going. One question we did get in chat is, do you notice that companies are more willing to accept industry certifications as an acceptable equivalent to a traditional 4-year degree? If anybody wants to take that question.
I would say it's company specific. A lot of places are willing to go without a degree if you're capable of doing the job. And with those certifications, I think they do have weight. So I definitely think that you need, background, you need to get your foot through the door, and certifications can definitely help you do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree with Eric from what I've seen. I mean, as the kind of technology education realm has kind of grown, and almost a lot of these folks are being self-educated or, where degrees I would see have been, less of a requirement, and experience is more of a focus for many, customers right now.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually see a question that goes along with just, the prior question was, this also came through chat, but then also I had this on my list. This is perfect, is just throughout COVID, what are some of the jobs that you guys are seeing more of? So going back to like what Sarah was saying in the very beginning, those support roles. But now what are some of the roles that you're seeing come back out again, and things that maybe you're seeing less of?
I know for us, we're seeing a lot more of the technical roles get approval to be pushed through right now, because a lot of the functional roles, like the BAs, the PMs that we pre-COVID would see majority of the time, a lot of those people that are already there can take on additional projects and kind of make sure it all works. But on the technical side, developers, DevOps, we've seen a lot of those positions, because without building out these new applications, even these new systems, the projects really get stalled. So those are what we've been seeing most of really since COVID hit in March.
The rest of you kind of seeing kind of the similar?
Yeah, without a doubt. We're working with a couple, Palm Beach tech organization. I'm just looking at the list of all the open roles we have, and it's very, very tech heavy, from, application development all the way to, professional service delivery, everything with a technical emphasis, because, there's a lot of ROI around that right now because of the amount of people that are open to new opportunities.
Okay. Perfect.
I would say that, more jobs are industry specific as well. So it kind of just depends on how the industry is. So focusing on industries that are succeeding is definitely something where you want to look at where there's openings, because, with travel and things along those lines, those are really down. So you're not going to see as many opportunities where other, SaaS-based platforms, things along those lines are going to have more openings.
Perfect. And we actually got another question that came through chat. And hi, Peggy from Peak Activities on with us this morning. So she was asking, having more companies that are open to remote work right now, is that expanding the pool of candidates and making it easier to recruit for you, or harder with them being remote?
Hi, Peggy. Good morning. For me, it's becoming harder, just because it opens up the pool that much much bigger. Yes, there's more candidates, but there's more options for candidates. So now, somebody in Orlando can work for an organization in New York or San Francisco. So it's, the candidates, there is a higher supply, but, the demand is also increasing.
Yeah, I would agree with what Max said. There's definitely a lot more options that recruiters can find nationwide. However, we're also finding hiring managers now know that instead of just looking where their office is located, they can look nationwide because everyone is remote. So we're also finding that they know that the talent right now is very much available. There's more, like you mentioned, there's more available people in IT than there are jobs. So because of this, we're actually seeing a lag time from sending candidates to actually getting placements and getting people to work, because hiring managers are being pickier, and good for them. Like, it's their right to, but at the same time, just because of the amount of candidates out there, they know they have more to choose from. So they'll take more time, look over more resumes. So there are more options out there, but there's also a lot of different things that can slow down the process. And because of the more options, kind of make it more difficult at the same time.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off Sarah's point, Max, feel free to chime in. We've got a lot of different perspectives here, and we do have a smaller sample size. Obviously, we're only 4 people. We've got only 33 open roles right now, but we have seen, like, with some of our clients, they understand that there's an opportunity right now to capitalize on some really top talent, because they find themselves in sticky situations. So some of our clients have actually sped up their hiring process because they want to get get these people in their building, working for them, because they feel like they're not going to be on the market very long.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ross, because, as you guys were just talking, I was just thinking that, not to say it in a bad way, but I think the smart ones are probably hiring much quicker, knowing that there's some, really great candidates that are on the pool and they don't want to in the pool and don't want to lose them. But I know,
Right.
again, to your point, Sarah, is there's probably a lot of people that are being a little bit pickier and kind of, taking their time through that. But I know that from experience also, it's just that a lot of times the slower processes, the candidates know that they've got more options now also. And so they're not willing to wait. So a lot of times they're losing great candidates. The company's not realizing that their slower process is actually kind of working against them right now.
Nikki, just one more point to add, just to give you just like a quick React Native is like a really popular language right now for development. React Native and Go, which is a Google development language. We got a job order last Monday for React developer in Miami, and by Wednesday we already filled the position. It was a one-step interview, which you don't typically see a lot of the times, but there's just such a demand for this specific type of language that people will do anything to get people in the door as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and on that point too, have you guys noticed just the process itself changing? Because I know just when I was in staffing myself, there was a lot of, first there's a phone interview with the hiring manager, then you have to do a phone interview with the HR manager, then you have to go in person and meet with one person, then you meet with the CEO. And it was like this big, long process. And a lot of times there were panel interviews. Have you guys noticed any of that changing, especially with it being remote? Are the hiring managers or HR managers, are they more accessible? Has that helped at all?
Less accessible.
Really?
I mean, I would say that the interview process has definitely changed. There's no on-site interviews anymore. It's never, it hasn't been, that used to be a mandatory in a majority of roles. And it's, coming down to a Zoom or a couple phone calls compared to that on-site interview. So, making sure that you're prepped to do an on Zoom interview is going to be something that's going to become a skill set. It's not just going to be a phone call and you're going to go and meet in person as much as you would in the past.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, Eric. I mean, we did something like that during even just our virtual career expo. Was we had different career workshops going on. And one of them was literally, how do you prep for a remote interview? Because people are so used to in-person interviews. And so that all they really worry about is, okay, I've got my resume with me, I'm dressed great, and it's all physical things. And so I think just learning how to, kind of get your point across and having, because a lot of, 70% of what's the statistic? 70% of all language is body language, which you can't have remote. So has that changed for you guys as far as the prepping process for the candidates and how to do that with a remote interview?
What's interesting with that, Nikki, and just to piggyback off what you said, Eric, is we had a candidate not get a job because his bed wasn't made when he had a Zoom interview. So there's just some things that you can prep for, and then some things that are just, it's all on the candidate, right? Where it's, you can't tell a person to make a bed before the interview. You just think that they're not going to put the video camera in front of their bed with their unmade bed.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. It was funny because in that workshop that we had, it was simple things like, make sure that you're facing a window or have one of the little ring lights in front of you to light up your face. Make sure that you sit, with a flat background in the back, against a wall, something like that. So it was a lot of simple things. Obviously, even this morning, what I have to do is I tell the kids and the dogs, I keep them in one room and keep everybody quiet until I'm done. There's still issues that pop up once in a while, but yeah, I think just it's been a lot more prepping than people are used to, just kind of prepping their space, prepping themselves, getting ready than typically what people are used to. I do have a couple questions, other questions that came through chat. So Peggy also asked, what's most important to candidates during this time as they consider a new company and job?
I would deal with, when I'm dealing with people, it's definitely something when you offer a contract and they're in a permanent role, they're very hesitant. And that was something that I saw on a regular basis, but I feel like people want more consistency now. That they want to feel comfortable in their role. They want to have continuity. So, I mean, when you're looking at people who are willing to do contracts, looking to do perm, I feel like a lot of people want that stability for what they're looking for in their market, especially in their career, if they're not at a certain stage.
One question we get all the time is, what's their stance on COVID? You know, are they in office? Are they remote? You know, all these different questions that you've never been asked before, and you have to, you know, ask as part of your interview process with the client. It's, how are you handling this?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of going on what off what Max said, culture's always been important. You can always have the right technology skills, but culture is something that you can't be trained. You got to make sure you're finding the right fit for you. So people are really asking a lot more questions about that side of it, because they want a company that doesn't just want you to get your work done and then not go home, but like get off your computer, because companies that don't value their people aren't the ones that are going to have you come into the office. They want to make sure that they're valued for themselves. They have to put their families first. It's not just them and their career anymore. There's a lot more other situations that they have to consider. So the COVID question comes up, I think, every time we talk to a candidate, because some companies are 100% back on site, and a lot of candidates that we're talking to, it could be the perfect fit and they'll love the idea of it, and then they hear that and they just won't do it. So learning about the company and how they treat their people is huge now.
Have the questions around obviously like PTO or benefits or any of that kind of stuff, is any of that changing, especially like ones like PTO with people being home already? Have you guys noticed a change in any of that?
No.
Not really. Those all seem to be about the same.
Yeah, but I would say, I mean, you know, there hasn't been much changed from that type of benefit, you know, scenario, but you know, I mean, I feel like it's ultimately something to look into and, you know, compare versus other companies, you know, as you're trying to, you know, find your next role. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of a change.
Okay, perfect. One other question we did get in chat says from Aaron, in South Florida, how tight does it get? Let me see. In South Florida, how tight does it get the candidates market after 5 months of COVID? Especially since in Florida, there are a lot of transient people living here and moving to other states with more opportunities. So if I understand the question, are you guys noticing more people, you know, that are taking jobs here in Florida that are not from Florida? And do you think that's going to make our area he uses the word tight, but I guess it means just seeing a lot of transient people in and out? Or are you guys expecting a lot of people to move here after COVID? Like, are the remote jobs, I guess, that are being taken, are those companies expecting the people to actually move here afterwards?
It's been company specific for us. So depending on what their plans are come like January 1 or when they're planning to transition, that's when, you know, they're still figuring it out. A lot of people are. So having that need or want to have somebody on site when they're planning to have their team back is definitely where I'm seeing it. It's been specific to who we're working with, the positions we're working on, and what they're asked in their title. So I would say it's specific, but I mean, a lot of travel has gone down. You know, there's going to be a lot of people that still want to live in Florida, and the fact if you can keep your job, be remote, and be in Florida, I can't see why you wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, I would say the common question, you know, is, you know, for us when we qualify the roles is like, okay, it's remote now, but would you require the person to be on site once, you know, COVID is defined or over? And so I would say most of the time the clients, they're under that impression that they would want that person to, you know, come on site, which kind of alleviates those, you know, people in Chicago working remotely for clients here in Florida with the expectations of relocating. So, you know, even though we're working remotely, the folks that are local to those clients, what we're seeing is they gain, you know, higher consideration, even though they're remote. But, you know, as long as, because the expectations, you know, COVID's not going to be here forever. And then, you know, at one point when we turn the switch on where everybody's allowed to be back in the office, well, can they actually get there? So
you're saying the companies are still highly preferring the local people?
We're saying, yeah.
Right.
I mean, if the role requires it to be on site, like as a preference, you know, after COVID, then yeah, then and we would see that preference, even though it's kicking off remote, to have that location or the ability to come on site when appropriate.
Mhm. Are you guys, the other panelists, are you guys seeing kind of the same thing?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the same thing. They're open to remote candidates just because they know talent right now is so diverse. But if someone's local and could still commute into the office once COVID has kind of blown over, they definitely go to the top of the list for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another question in chat here that kind of goes along with this is just, are you seeing, which we're learning already from talking to you guys, is still the preference is local, but are you seeing that a lot of these positions that maybe would have been local before, are the companies looking at fully remote work at all, like long-term? Like, are any of these job descriptions changing like permanently?
I haven't seen a defined, right now, obviously the trend is to work remote, but obviously I think the future is going to tell, post-COVID, what's the next step in regards to people working remotely. I know we have some clients that, they absolutely no remote at all. And now they have 2,000 people working remotely. So I think clients have totally shifted into a, pretty much mandatorily just, adopting remote. But once, the restrictions are lifted to come in and, back in the office, then, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility because so many companies were you're on site. That's how it is. There's no remote flexibility. Just because there's always a question of can you actually be productive while remote? And most of the companies that we work with, I know their productivity has actually gone up since being remote, which everyone has been really impressed by. So I think just in the times post-COVID, offices right now are people on top of each other, a lot of open layouts. I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility. I think a couple days in the office, maybe a day or two remote a week, just to limit the people in the offices. And we've already proven that we can do it. We could be productive. So I think companies will have more of an open mind moving forward for sure.
100%.
Perfect. So I want to talk about a little bit about some of the values, both from the candidate side and then also from the company side of using a staffing agency. One of the first questions that I know Eric and I were talking about this the other day was with so many candidates now in the market, you guys are saying obviously the market's completely flipped, is how can a company recruit and hire, especially if they have a small HR recruiting staff internally that may be overwhelmed with so many candidates right now? How can a staffing agency actually be of help to them?
I mean, I would say with so many people on the market, they're getting flooded. It's definitely something where, even at the expo, I think we had a decent amount of jobs posted, but the amount of applicants that we got, it wasn't always people that were the perfect fit for the position. So you're seeing the ability to have a lot of people just already screened, already understand where they're at. You have a direct relationship. It's really good on both sides because you're kind of bypassing a lot of the steps that it takes to get in front of the right person, when it comes to getting to a hiring manager. And a hiring manager is getting qualified candidates that aren't just sending in a resume. They have an idea as to what it's going to cost them. They have an idea as to what, the person's been doing. And if you have that direct relationship, it just speeds up the process on both sides.
So I'll use a story that, we just hired a recruiter for our team. So we just hired our 5th employee. I posted the job on LinkedIn. I got 350 applicants. Of those 350 applicants, only one person sent me like a detailed message about why she thought she'd be a good fit, what she liked about our culture, this, that. She was the one that got hired, right? So, being able to, kind of coach up a candidate on what, what they're looking for, what, needs to happen in the process, and being able to be the intermediary to save both sides a lot of time and energy throughout that whole entire process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I would just say one of the biggest things is time. This is what we do. This is solely what we focus on. So once we know about a role, we're going to dedicate our efforts to really helping you find that perfect fit for the role. And then kind of just going off that is, I know a lot of these firms have been in the market for a while, but South Florida and IT is what we do. This is every day what we focus on. So we have a good gauge on the market. We have relationships in the market, and one of the biggest advantages really in recruiting and in staffing is referralizing. So not just finding a random resume off of LinkedIn or off a career builder, but using your network and helping really find the best candidates for that job. Not just someone who will take any job, but finding the right person for the right role. So I know our company's been in South Florida for over 20 years, and we really have those relationships. So that's one of our biggest advantages, is really saving people time and money and finding them that right fit.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, when I was in staffing, both in healthcare and in tech, every time we would post a really, I guess, quote unquote, popular job that we knew we were going to get a lot of candidates for, it was almost like you were waiting for like, oh God, how many submittals are we going to get? And you'd have to go through hundreds of them. And so I'm thinking, and the funny thing is a lot of them, this is something I was talking to Eric about the other day too, is just that like, you get people that are completely not qualified, not even in the industry. You get, way entry level to the super senior, like, and you literally have to a lot of times do a lot of like weeding through these candidates. And I think it may be a little bit different, obviously, for companies that have like multiple of their own internal recruiters, but for a lot of these companies that are either smaller or don't have their own internal recruiting team, and you're relying on an HR manager, they sometimes, not that they couldn't do this, they just literally don't have the time, especially for HR managers. They're worrying about so many other things that I think the actual recruiting portion of their job is so small that they're worried about onboarding and whatever issues are going on in the company and the COVID stuff and building culture. And they just have a lot of different hats to wear, that even just us being in a staffing company, we were overwhelmed with how many candidates and trying to go through all of them. So I can't imagine actually being, somebody from the company. Were you going to say something, Tyson? Sorry, I thought.
Oh, no. I apologize. I was agreeing with it.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And yeah, no, it's, you're correct on that. I agree.
And Robert, did you want to say something?
No, not on this, but we did recently put out a product marketing role, and we had 450 people apply in the first 2 days. So yeah. So we felt that, and our CMO had to go through all those with a couple of us, and yeah, it's definitely better to use a staffing firm for that and a recruiting firm. So I feel you.
Yeah, and I think, that at least for me, one common misconception that a lot of people had with staffing companies is they're like, why would I use them if I'm getting so many candidates? A lot of times that's literally the issue, is you're getting so many candidates that you can't go through them. And obviously not every single job may need a staffing company. Maybe there are easier to fill ones, or ones where you're getting just enough candidates. It should be the ones where it's overwhelming, or you're getting, not getting enough candidates. Or maybe it's super urgent, harder to fill. The ones that have skill sets are maybe much harder to find. Those are the ones I think are perfectly fit for a staffing agency. Actually, a really good question just came in chat. Aaron was asking, do recruiting or staffing companies use ATS to filter candidates? And I think probably to add to that question too is, what's the positive or negatives of that?
I would sure hope, that a traditional staffing firm would use, an ATS to filter. I'm not necessarily to filter, but to organize, because, as you're getting flooded with a ton of applications, you need to make sure, like, all right, these candidates are for this job. And so you're able to kind of maintain some sort of organization around it. But yeah, I don't know if it would be to technically filter, but it would definitely be to preview and be able to manage the candidate experience, to assist them in that fulfillment of that role.
Mm-hmm. And for anybody, sorry, that doesn't know ATS, I just realized we use an acronym that maybe everybody doesn't know. ATS means applicant tracking system. So a lot of times it's a software that like manages all the candidates that come in using like keywords that are kind of stick out through their resume. So just wanted to put that out there in case anybody.
Yes, as someone who's worked at an applicant tracking system and talks to people using them all day, it's almost like SEO. And Francine, correct, you do want to use keywords. You don't want to overdo it. It's almost like website SEO, where you want to make sure that you're targeting the keywords that you're using, because there's AI and matching. And then there's also, I agree with you that it's not filtering, it's organizing. So make sure that your keywords that you're looking to hit are 100% on point there. And it's definitely more organizing than filtering. So I agree that they should not be filtering out. There is some bias in AI tools, especially in tech, especially if you're a coder. But we're trying to get those out. Like one of my goals is to always make sure people are cognizant of unconscious bias in AI towards technology, towards coding, developers, et cetera. So.
Do any of your firms use any ATS to the panelists?
So that's my biggest challenge as a small business is an ATS. We use Salesforce as a CRM. That's what we're trying to do better at it. But like I mentioned in the first, couple minutes, I'm a sales guy turned recruiter. Sales guys are notoriously bad at CRM. So maybe Tyson and we could talk about that offline out.
Yeah, we use a CRM bullhorn just to keep track of everything and help organize, keep our notes, keep our relationships close. But it doesn't like weed anyone out or kind of like you were talking about, filter through candidates and not allow others in. Everyone is entered, and then within a certain amount of time, a recruiter reaches out and then actually has a conversation and can update things that a resume might not be able to show. So that's the relationship side of the business. We'll get a notification that someone's interested in something and we'll immediately give them a call. And we have a team of 20 plus recruiters. So that's a lot of the day is just updating and building relationships and actually learning more about people's background than just what their resume shows.
Yeah, and Sarah, I think that's a good point. Going into the next question that I have is just that with the question with the ATS systems, I think a lot of people are worried about, if I put in these certain keywords into my resume, is it going to weed me out? And then all of a sudden I'm not seen for a job. Like, a lot of people look at it as a negative. I think that if a company is using it, it can be a positive if it's properly organizing people. But I think that companies that rely on them too heavily, and this is just my opinion, that it does get rid of that relationship piece of it. So with Sarah, what you were saying is I think a really good agency, and probably one of the first questions that whether you're a company or you're a candidate, is talking to the agency and talking to your representative and asking them about that culture and how do they go about building, the relationship with you, and what does that look like inside the staffing agency and how important is that to them? Because there are staffing agencies that literally just use tech. And in my opinion, that's not the best way to do it, that you have to build a relationship with people. You have to, because there's so many things that when you're going through somebody's resume that are not on there, that people don't know to put on their resume, or maybe it's things about their personal life, or, if they're going to be a good culture fit within a certain company, that's not going to be on a resume. So, whether you're working long-term with a company or long-term with a candidate, that the relationships, in my opinion, are probably the most important thing, because I'm sure there's so many candidates I know things about in my head but are not on the resume.
Right, and especially like from a candidate side, I think that's one of the biggest perks of working with a staffing agency, is you are more than just a resume there. Someone is going to reach out to you, someone will talk to you, learn about not just what you're looking for tech-wise, but also the environment you want to work in. And part of a recruiter's job is finding you a job. So if there's something on your resume that you're not exemplifying in the best way, we're able to coach with you. We do resume seminars. We want to help you get the job any way possible. If it's through something you find on your own, great. If we were able to help you in any way, that means we were doing what our job is. So definitely one of the biggest perks of using a staffing agency from the candidate side.
Perfect. And we actually have another question in chat. It says, I've been noticing lately that job descriptions can be incomplete from a hiring manager or do not make sense, like asking JavaScript skills for a project manager position and so on. I guess the question there would be, have you guys seen a lot of issues with either non-technical people writing the job descriptions or HR managers struggling that? I know I had candidates, or I had clients too, that in the past would struggle with that sometimes, like getting the right job descriptions out there. How much of an issue do you guys see that being, and do you guys get that a lot?
Yes, quite often, and that's why they're using a recruitment company usually, because they're unable to find the person on their own, and the job description is a pain point. I know for Max and I, sometimes we don't even send the job description candidates because it's really not even applicable for that scenario. That's what Max has really opened my eyes to, is having, like you touched on, Nikki, having that conversation with our client and really digging in. And even if something we think is obvious, we still have to ask because we're surprised sometimes at what they know and oftentimes what they don't.
Mhm.
Yeah, you'll see HR put out a position and, you'll have a conversation with the hiring manager and you'll find out specifics that just aren't there. And that will just allow you to, go out and get the right person. And the right person might see that job online and be like, oh, that's not what I do. So just sometimes you get a form of clarity that you wouldn't have had with that second set of eyes on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Eric. And I think it's kind of going back to, the comment I was saying before is that HR managers have a lot on their plate. They're wearing a lot of hats. They have a lot of responsibilities. So I think it's no fault of their own that they're doing the best that they can and putting these job descriptions together. But I think it proves all the more reason why the hiring managers need to be involved. I know in the past, a lot of my clients that prior to building a good relationship with them, everything was done straight through HR, which I understand that the first step of the process is HR, but definitely getting the hiring managers involved, especially from the beginning and more early on, I think can be a huge benefit to the company because then you're getting better candidates. It's not wasted time. I know that was something that, both in healthcare and in tech, we would see a lot.
Yeah, definitely. As an account manager, I'll, of course, as soon as I get any new job from HR or a manager, I'll have my team start working on it. But I don't really have them focus their entire energy on it until I'm able to have that conversation, because so often it can read completely different than what they're actually looking for. And then I know on the recruiting front, because I was in recruiting before this, is a lot of candidates do think that they have to be 100% the fit of what the job description is. And they'll see a job and you'll call them about it and be like, oh no, like I don't have that and that. So a lot of the biggest thing for me as a recruiter was really coaching them on, hey, if you have 80% of a job description, like we're going to have a conversation. It's definitely worth it. No one really ever has 100% of what is being asked for in a job description. That could be a page or two long. So it's always worth the conversation to go more in depth and kind of see what you do, what you don't have, and kind of go off that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. And off topic though, Aaron, you've been asking some really great questions, and
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a role for you. It looks like you're not working right now. Can you give Nikki? Can you give him my email address?
Yes, of course. See it. Aaron says, "LOL." Yes, the agencies can help, man.
I'm
Funny.
looking for a pro service PM at a company in Boca. So looks like you
There
have
go.
the services experience.
There you go. I did want to ask too, just along the lines of what we were just talking about with relationships, is that you all seem to agree the relationships are one of the most important pieces. Can you explain so that everybody kind of knows, both on the candidate side and on the company side, is why is building a relationship with the agency so important? Like why, if you have a good relationship versus another company that's maybe using that staffing company, why is your job going to get filled first? Why is that relationship so important with you all?
From like the client side, the relationship with that staffing agency, knowing like your actual business and also your client or your, your overall company culture, what you guys do, because the benefit of that agency to now sell the job to, a prospective candidate, it allows you to, have that culture, have that, real kind of sales representative on that client's behalf. And so then that way, when the people that are being, considered for roles there, your retention will increase because they already have a good idea up front of, what they're about to get into and setting up that next stage of interviews and so forth. So I think that would be one of the good benefits of having an agency, work with, a client working with an agency is to be able to, to help, sell their culture, sell their company. What exactly do they do versus a recruiting agency taking a job off of, some website and then sending it over. They don't know really much about the client themselves, and the candidate can sense that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say sometimes it's a who you know network, like a company may just send it out to an agency directly, not even post it. And then because you're working with that agency, you're getting to be one of the few in front of a hiring manager instead of going against the entire candidate pool that is just vast right now. So when you have some of these direct relationships with an agency and with, a company, you're getting a spot that just is not seen to the normal eye.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
that's a very good
definitely
point.
agree with both Eric and Tyson. It's culture. It's making that first call, like we mentioned. It's hard to fill a job that you've never had the conversation about what they're actually looking for. So if you have a relationship, most likely you're going to get in touch with that manager that's hiring sooner than later. And if you have that relationship, there's a good chance you really fully understand the business. You understand the culture of their team. I know even as a recruiter, the account manager that I was being mentored by, I would be on site at his clients weekly doing lunches, happy hours. So when a team had an open position, I knew exactly the culture of that team, how they collaborated. Certain teams were shy, they head down coders, and others, you need that personality, you need to be outgoing. So really understanding how each team functions and what that team is doing on the day-to-day is huge. It's not just selling a job description to a candidate, but really giving them full picture and what a day-to-day is going to be like if they accept and if they get that position. So being able to put that into words and tell someone outside the company about that is a game changer.
Mhm. Yeah,
What
and if
Sarah
I can
said-
just, oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say with what Sarah said, I mean, I feel that if you have that direct relationship with hiring managers, I've heard them say, I will, let a couple of things go on the skill side to have the personality match up with our
Mhm.
team.
You're very right. Yeah. And I think just to keep in mind too, the relationship, and again, this is just coming from, my personal point of view, but I know I was also on the business development side, and the candidates that were always on time to interviews, would always answer their phone, would always be accessible and were honest with that, us, like when we were going through the resume and their skills. The same thing on the company side. The ones that were always available to talk, included the hiring managers, gave us great feedback. Like instead of saying, oh, no, don't want that candidate, sorry, and wouldn't give us feedback, we didn't know why, so we couldn't adjust ourselves to find better candidates. The ones that were very open, honest, and would actually be very involved in the process. For me, I put 10 times my effort towards those than the ones that were giving us very minimal information, wouldn't include the hiring manager, the ones that, were hard to reach or wouldn't give us good feedback. So definitely both, I would suggest on the talent side and the company side, is just be very involved in the process and, make the relationship piece of it super important, because the staffing agencies, that is the most important thing to us. And we're going to end up putting that much more time towards you, whether you're a company or a candidate. I did want to spend, because we just got a few minutes left, so I did want to spend a little bit of time, let's see, on a couple more things. But I see one question in chat. Actually, this is an awesome question, and one I hear a lot, is Francine asked, how long should you wait for a response from an application after it's received by the company? Hate to apply to too many companies at one time.
I'd love to take this one. I mean, if you're just applying for positions on LinkedIn, you're one of I think it was, I forget who said, it says for Robert, he said he had 450 applications, right? You need to be different, right? You need to, go on different data platforms, find out who the hiring manager is, get their email address, send them an email about why you think you're the best person for the position, call them, LinkedIn message. I think, if you're not working with a recruiting agency and you're applying directly, you got to think of applying like sales, where you have to be different. You have to set yourself apart. Otherwise, you're going to be in a sea of 450 candidates that all look very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to add to that, Max, that's a good point. I won't use the company or the person's name, but when at the last company in tech staffing, we actually had, this is a great example, was we had a candidate that had applied to a position, and even though we had a relationship with them, he didn't use the agency for this position, because he said, oh, this position is perfect for me, I'm just going to apply, they'll see my resume and I'll get it right away. It ended up sitting in what we called at the agency was always the HR pool, where they got so many candidates that it just sat there, and his resume was actually missed. And so he called us and said, hey, can you guys help me? And so we actually, called the company and told them, hey, we're not asking for any money for this. We know that he went directly. We just want to help you guys because we want to build that relationship with you all. And basically said, once you see his resume, we promise you he'll get hired overnight. And he did. They had no idea that the resume was there. They hadn't seen it. They completely missed it. And so I think sometimes that does happen. And going back to the relationship piece is that we would have known immediately that candidate was a good fit there. But you definitely don't want to be one of 400. So there has to be a way for you to stick out, and using an agency is one of those reasons. But if you're not using an agency, like Max said, is you have to make other connections. You have to, kind of reach out and be different, versus just sitting and waiting. And not being scared to follow up either. I know a lot of candidates will wait and feel like they don't want to be, for lack of better words, like a pain in the ass, but you're not. I mean, if you know that you're a good fit, make sure that you're doing that follow-up. I don't know if any of you want to add to that.
I want to second what you said, for sure. I think it's one of the major benefits is that relationship and getting to the top of the line, or at least being the top 5 or 10, however many the company submitted. I've seen that be successful. And I think getting into that pool of 400 is definitely a slow way not to get any feedback, for sure. And if you apply to a staffing agency, or recruiting agency, in the next 12 hours, you should get some kind of communication from them, if not within the hour. So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest complaints about staffing companies. So just a FYI.
No, that's a good point. And honestly, if you're working with an agency that hasn't gotten back to you, I would definitely address that, and making sure that if it's not being addressed and if it's not getting better, look for another one. Like that should be pretty standard, is that once somebody's submitted with the expectation that the staffing agency has a relationship with that company as well, is you should be getting feedback on resumes. My rule was always in 24 hours, but yeah, I mean, if it's an urgent role and you're being submitted, you typically get responses within the hour. But yeah, I think that's great, Robert, that you added that. Let's see. Okay, so sorry, I was just checking chat. So one question I did want to ask for prospective candidates, what are some good questions that they can ask, or maybe that you all ask, that can help them evaluate one job over another, or even one company over another? Because a lot of candidates have that question of, I don't know where to apply. I don't know the culture in a company, prior. So what are the things, some of the questions that they can ask to kind of gauge whether the company may be a good fit for them, and not just the job, not matching the job description to the resume, but the actual culture of the company?
Yeah, kind of just going off that, definitely my biggest thing is whenever we have people interviewing with clients and other organizations, is definitely have questions. That is the biggest thing. Never go into an interview without questions. But to learn about the company in that long term, and if it's going to be the right fit for you, ask about the team, ask how they collaborate, what is the style, how do different team members interact? Then also, like, what are the long-term goals for this company? Where does the company see itself in 5-10 years? And where do you see this position in 5 or 10 years? What are the paths I could take? What are the different options of where I can go after this? So I think those are always good things to ask, and just making sure you're asking questions about the future always shows that you're interested in that and that you want to be there.
A good tip.
I mean, I would say due diligence is always important, especially when you're getting prepped for an interview. Like looking into the company, looking into seeing if you have any way connected to your network that's already there, making it a little bit easier for yourself compared to being like, oh, I went on their website, read the job description. Look at some of the people that are in that title and where they came from and how they got there. So you can kind of relate into their team and what they have going on.
Very good. And we have literally 2 minutes left. So I just want to ask to each of the panelists, what is one piece of advice that would give to anybody, whether it's on the candidate side or the company, that has never used an agency before? What is advice, either for questions they can ask, how do they find a good agency, the best way to approach an agency for the first time? What would be your advice?
If I was going to be looking for a particular agency, I would actually go back to my history. I would go back and see who's reached out to me in the past, and maybe even develop a list of those particular firms and recruiters. And then from there, I would probably decide, who had the most communication, like who showed the most professionalism. Because a lot of times these technical resources have been reached out over the years by many recruiters. And so they technically have a network in their back pocket that some may not know. So that'd be probably my first step. And then from there, reach out, make sure, the agency has roles that are relevant to their skill sets, and be able to go from there.
I would ask just other peers, hiring managers that you know in your network, hey, who are you using? Why are you using them? And then the same thing on the candidate side. Who has good communication? Who has role, like what Tyson was saying, who has roles that fit my background? And because, my recruiting company is a lot different than Tyson's, which is a lot different than Sarah's. And so when people contact me about an ERP project, I'm like, hey, no, I need digital marketers, or I need, more of these types of people. So not all staffing companies are the same.
Yeah, kind of going off that, I would definitely, on the candidate side and on the hiring manager side, listen to the types of questions they're asking you and what the conversations are like. If they're just asking you about the very bare minimum, what are you looking for technology wise, or what are your main tech stack that you want to work with, that's very surface level stuff and probably not going to find you the best opportunity for you in the long term. See if they're asking you the personal questions, the type of collaboration you want to work with, where do you want to end up, what is your long-term plan, because you want someone that's working for you, not just for you to be another number and another placement for them. So definitely someone that wants to help you and really get to know you for who you are and where you want to go.
I would say that agencies want everyone to succeed. For companies, we want to pair up with you. We want to cheer you on, and we want to deliver for you. So we want to be a part of your team. And then for candidates, I would say, have your information out there. You never know when something's going to happen. So to have it out there and having somebody looking for somebody like you is always a good thing. If you don't want to get blown up on your cell phone, use a Google Voice. Have a work email that you dedicate to just seeing what's out there. And just, be willing to expand your network, because it definitely is something that it's, the more people the better off you are in this, in your career.
Very good. And thank you so much for all of you coming together today. And I also appreciate both Ross and Rob also putting in some input there too. Both of them obviously work within the realm. Just wanted to, again, thank everybody that came on here. Aaron, Jan, everybody in chat that's put some good questions in there. We really appreciate it. And I know there's probably so many things that we didn't even get a chance to touch on this morning, but I think these were all really good points and really good conversation to have. And hopefully we can start, getting rid of some of the bad rap that staffing agencies get, because I know that, we can be really helpful in the right situation and the right relationships are built. So just again, thank you everybody for showing up so early this morning, starting us off early at 8 a.m. And I appreciate all the panelists. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.